G'day. Hello. Good to see you. God, I wish the camera would work out how much light to let in. Goes from black to white to black to white, and I think, oh my God. Anyway, here I am. I'm outside. It is Wednesday. It's 12:30 more or less, and I've spent the morning writing. So I'm going to start out here in the garden and just show you things like I like to do, and then I'm going to go inside and give you the update. So here we go. It's all very long here. It's sort of purposeful leaving it long because the wildflowers, I mean, look at these buttercups and the white clover. They're really pretty. Hello, Mike. It's lovely to know that you were waiting for me, you sweetie. I appreciate it. So the wildflowers are lovely, but nonetheless, it's all a bit mad. It will get mowed eventually, but the truth is that we have limited time to do gardening, and sometimes the weather doesn't help, and so we've just had priorities. But I'm showing you what's out here. Hi Nesreen, it's lovely to see you. Hi Pia, great to see you here. Oh look, there's a bumblebee over there doing its thing. Just busy on the cineraria. Oh look, I've got a foxglove coming up in there. Don't know if you can see it. It's just, I don't want to put my leg through a spider's web, but see, there's a that thing that's growing up is a foxglove. So yeah, everything's still coming out. Look, this tree, I don't know if you can see, it's got white flowers coming through, and the neighbour's maple is glorious, and you probably can barely see it, but there is a little sprig of a thing out there that I moved. I'll show you what I did. See, everything's coming out, and look at the bright leaves on the cotinus. And then these are last year's, the ones that have gone brown, but they're so bright and yellow, I just enjoy it. It's not the cotinus, this is the orchidea. The cotinus is that purple thing that's sticking up the back. So we even have a few roses. The miniature roses are already growing spots because that's what happens here. But you can also see that they're starting to thrive because I moved them. At last, they're in a good place. What was I going to show you? So, oh yes, this iris is a bit miserable because I dug something out here and disturbed its roots, but see, it's got glorious petals. They're a bit damaged because it had rain, but it's lovely, and there'll be a couple more. It'll be better next year. And the compassion rose is coming out, but this, oh my God, there's something, and there's three, see this? If I let that run to seed, that will be bad. If I let this run to seed, that will be bad. I've got a dead head in the front garden and I'd forgotten, but it's not the end yet. The cherry is still going beautifully, really. The cherry's glorious. And the magnolia is still there. And see this thing here? This was a common pot plant 20 or 30 years ago. It's called a ratamachea. And I had a number of them and ended up putting them in the garden, and you know, if you have a look, they get big. See, there's trunks in there, you can see. Quite thick. It's grown. But I had another one in there, which I moved 3 weeks ago. That was really hard work because it was well established. And last weekend, excuse me, I moved one that was in here. So now I've got all these gaps. But that's okay because I need to clean out, see this thing which makes lovely flowers, but it's an absolute disaster and I have to get rid of it, and that's going to take a year or more. So space is good because it makes it easier. Oh, and look, the deutzia is coming out. Not yet, but it's covered in flowers. So, you know, this is the garden. It's all very green, pretty lush, spring, late spring, summer in a month. And that's what's happening, and maybe by next week some of the lawn will get mowed. Some of the back lawn is done, but yeah, not the front. There's just been a limited amount of time. Oh, I suppose I will show you what's happening in the bulb garden. This is the garden I reorganised last year, a couple of years back. We've got the sedum, which is just sort of finishing, and then these crazy lilies that come up, and I've got wild lobelia and lots of wild violas and the huge Lilium regale. They get about this tall, you know, really big lilies. This has gotten kind of beaten up by the wind, but it's still there. And the fabulous, I just love this foliage. Look at that. So bright. And all of these things, this is the autumn crocus. I moved them all, and they're here and they're also up there, and they will be very bright in autumn. And there are other bulbs that I am looking forward to seeing them flower. And there's a lily in here that I just wanted it to come up through everything. And there it is. So that's the garden. Let's just go inside and I will give you the update on what I've been doing. So I hope you enjoyed the ramble, because I sure did. Just left the keys in the door and pop in here, hang up my hat, because that's what's supposed to happen to a hat. And here I am. So now I can relax inside. And the thing about being inside is I can rest my camera on my laptop, and I have my little thingy, and it tells me what to talk about, because I got quite a lot done this morning. And although it's 12:30 when I start talking to you, I pretty much have to stop at 12 and get myself organised and figure out, well, how am I going to tell the story and what actually is the story that I'm telling. So the story that I'm telling is that last week I got to a point where I was comfortable that I'd explained how we learn by repetition. So that's like what happens when you go to school and you learn how to do your times tables, or you learn how to walk. I mean, don't you just try again? Or you learn a new fact that you really want to remember, and you have to repeat it in your mind. We learn by repeating new facts and learning new skills and practicing them until we have them fired and wired in our brain and we've memorized them and mastered them. And that's one way in which we learn. But there is another way in which we learn. There are two ways. And the second way in which we learn is by having a memorable experience. So, for example, many people can remember when they had their first kiss, or if they've had a child, when that child was born, or if there was a serious accident, or they got fired from work, and it was it doesn't matter whether it's good or it's bad. If we have a really emotional experience, we're going to remember it. And so I need to explain this, because the wider context of this is that I've been talking about habits. I've been explaining habits and how we form them. And of course, you don't have a habit until you've learned something and repeated it over and over and over again. And in the context of changing yourself, because you want your life to be different, if you've got a habit and you want to change it, you need to understand how you've learned that habit in order to be able to understand how you might unlearn that habit. So that's why I'm talking about learning. And so coming back to learning, we learn by repetition, but we also learn by having memorable experiences. And those memorable experiences are, and this is part of the story that I didn't actually really get to do properly, but they're memorable to us because in some way they're new or unusual, or they're important. And in our brain, not in our conscious thinking mind, like we have the neocortex, the part of our brain that we use for reasoning and logic and conscience and ethics and creating things and solving problems and all of that. That's the walnut, right? That's the thing that's on the outside that everyone's sort of familiar with when you talk about the brain. We don't use that. We do use that to decide what's important, but that's when we're thinking rationally and logically, and we're analysing things, and we're just chugging along through our life. But our brain decides what's important according really to whether it's going to help us survive in the world or not. That's the brain's priority, is survival. And if you're in survival, if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling angry, if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling upset or irritated or agitated or desperate or depressed or whatever it is, any of those states of being that we think those are unpleasant, bad, unhealthy, whatever states of being, those are survival emotions. It's only when you get out of survival that you start to feel the other emotions that we like to feel But they seem to be so much harder. It's like, why is it so hard to change from feeling bad to feeling good? Well, there's reasons for that, which I want to explain. But right now, what I'm explaining is how it is that emotions help us learn. And of course, the challenge is I'm doing this without really going into the neuroscience because I don't want to do that. But I do want to be sound in the way that I explain it. And that's always the thing that's going on in my head, you know. If Dr. Joe, who is the person, Dr. Joe Dispenza, from whom I've learned so much, was to read this, what do you think? Oh God, there's a massive hole in the science there. Because I want it to be solid. And I'll probably get into the neuroscience later. But I'm thinking of people who might just be put off by that, or might not have the brain space because they're in too much pressure, they're in too much stress to actually absorb that much information. So I'm trying to really strip things down to the absolute basics right now. And you can clip more onto it later, but you've got to start somewhere, and that's the way I've decided to do it. So, how we learn, and there's a story that I tell earlier in what I've written about a cave woman and her family, and I've called her Amma, and she has an experience that is life-threatening, and essentially after that she gets PTSD. And I use it as an example. It's really about how thoughts make feelings, and feelings make thoughts, and thoughts make feelings, and feelings make thoughts. And that is how people get stuck in an emotional experience, is they just get stuck in a loop. But in this case, part of what I wrote about is that she had this life-threatening experience, and the reason she survived it is because her father had a similar life-threatening experience, and he had told her what to watch out for. So he'd given her his memory of the experience to inform her, to help her. Hey, kid, if you see this, if you smell this, if you hear this, run for your life. And that information saved her life. And so I just went back a generation. I said, well, think about Amma's father. You know, when he had that experience of surviving that thing, he would have felt a lot of fear. He might have felt rage in defending himself. He might have felt panic. And when it was over, he would have felt a lot of relief. So this very emotional experience. When his children were born, he felt pride. He probably felt love. He probably felt, you know, all the things that a new parent feels. And if he went out to hunt and brought home a big animal that they could eat, you know, and they could skin and they could use the hide to make clothes for the family, he would have felt very satisfied and pleased and relieved also. Oh my God, my family's going to be able to eat for the next little while, and I can relax, and all those things. So emotional experiences, and the thing that is in common between all of those experiences, and us too, when we decide that something's important, no matter what it looks like, is it's about survival. He survived the attack by the animal. He survived. His children were born. He passed his genetic heritage on. That's survival. The brain is saying, you need to pass your genes on and keep the species alive. So, of course, that's emotional, because it's wired to be emotional so that we do it, and so that, you know, we remember, and this is my child, and I'm going to defend this child, and I'm going to bond to this child, and I'm going to bond to my mate because we have this child in common. All those things are wired chemically in the brain. And then, you know, yes, I have hunted and I've killed this beast and I can feed my family, and there's a skin that we can use for something useful. And all of that is emotionally charged because it means my family's going to survive. I'm going to survive. And so when we react to something, no matter what it seems like, it's because in some way our brain says this is going to help my survival, or it's a threat to my survival. And so I'll make examples about that. And the survival connection I actually haven't even made in the writing, but this was my thinking as I was writing it. That piece has actually got to come later, because then I thought, okay, well, so what's happening in the brain here? How does all that help a person to learn? And so I had to go back to thoughts make feelings, sure. And okay, so how does that happen? You have a thought that's going from neuron to neuron, and you have neurotransmitters that help it jump across the synapse. And the neurotransmitters, which happen in the walnut, in the think brain, send signals, or they communicate with the emotional brain, which is the chemical brain, the animal brain, the mammalian brain, the survival brain. It's got all these names. And the communication that goes from the neurotransmitters here to the chemical brain says,
okay, send this particular batch and blend of chemicals that matches these thoughts, and send these chemicals to the body so that the body's going to feel the feelings that go with the thoughts. And then I found myself writing about emotions, and I have all the way through this writing, and there's quite a bit of writing I've done, I have stayed away from the word emotion, because I know from my study of what I've learned from Dr. Joe Dispenza that feelings and emotions are not the same thing. And that was a surprise to me, and it's quite a subtle distinction, but it's an important one, and I needed to make it. So I thought, how am I going to explain this? And how did I explain that? I'm having a blank at the moment. What did I write down? Well, you see, right now, in that moment, not that this is happening, but if I was feeling more pressured, I could get a bit of a heat rush. You know how when you're feeling pressured, your body feels hot, you literally get hot under the collar? That is a feeling. There's been some release of a hormone in my body, which has meant vasodilation. That heat, when you feel it, means that blood vessels have expanded in your body, your skin, your extremities, or wherever, and you feel heat. So there's been a signal, oh, I'm under pressure, I need more blood supply here, and you get hot under the collar. I'm stressed, right? Oh, I'm glad you like how I break it down, Nesreen. I love to break things down. You know that about me. So yay, thank you for that feedback. Also, when you get some really bad news, your whole body sort of closes and you get that sick feeling. That's another chemical signal. So it may also be a neurological signal, but I'm just sticking to the chemistry for the moment. So we get these different feelings. And so then I had to think, well, what are some examples? Okay, so if I feel this warm feeling in my heart and my whole body feels alive and I just want to dance, well, you could call that joy, but it's a selection of feelings. It's feelings that come together because there's a whole cluster of neurons, there's a neural network in your brain that's firing, and the combination of neurotransmitters that get sent to your chemical brain and send the particular combination of chemicals to your body that mean you have that particular set of feelings, and you call it an emotion, but actually it's a bunch of different feelings. So feelings add up to emotions. So if you get that bad news and the pit of your gut sinks, that is a neurological and a chemical signal. Your gut contracts. You get cold all over. That's vasoconstriction. There's been another signal that's sent to your body, and you get those chills. All of that is coming from your brain. Really, it's coming from brain, it's coming from chemistry. There's a feedback. In my writing, I haven't even really talked about the fact that the body also sends signals to the brain, big time. So it actually goes both ways. But again, I'm keeping it simple, talking about brain to body, thought to feeling. But you got to know it comes in both directions. I just don't want to throw too much at people at one time. So we have these feelings and we become accustomed to saying, well, I feel this and this and this and this. And we don't think this logically. We just interpret the feelings as an emotion, and we give it a name. And I had this experience really powerfully and quite challengingly over the weekend. My body was running a program and it was doing fear. And I had this experience of observing it, thinking exactly this, I'm feeling this, and I'm feeling this, and I'm feeling this, and I'm feeling this. And this is my body doing this because this is not how I am actually being at the moment. My body was just stuck in the past. I'm okay in here. My body's doing fear, but I'm not my body. I'm not my body. So feelings add up to emotions, and it's a really important distinction to make. And that's pretty much where I got to. Where it's leading is, because I've still got to explain how emotions help us learn, the point being that the more emotionally charged something is, the stronger the chemical signal you get. You tend to get a lot of, there's enormous electrical activity too. If we have trauma, or if you have, the birth of a child is a really big event for many people, and it's just this huge memory. So it's not just for bad things. It's just we remember the bad things more easily. And there's a reason for that, because bad things you normally need to remember so that if it happens again, you're better prepared to survive, right? That's why it's so easy for us to focus on negative stuff, because we're geared to in order for survival. It's not very nice, and it's not very helpful to us, and if you keep doing it, it'll make you sick. It's just a fact. So that's how it works, and that's where it's heading, is I want to be able to explain this is how it's so powerful. The signal's really strong, and you can have a really powerful experience, and it can change you forever because the signal is so strong, and it's not just thoughts, it's enormous amounts of chemistry that actually change the body. I think you can have a massive fast onset, Mike. The point is that emotion is always going to be a summation of feelings in your body, and it can be so vast and so overwhelming that you might not have any awareness of the different bits. You just think, oh my God, I feel this. But in fact, if you had the presence of mind, you would be able to observe and notice, oh, there's actually this, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this. And I mean, it doesn't matter, but it's an important distinction to make just to understand what's going on in our bodies. That the different neurotransmitters trigger different neuropeptides. That's what happens in the chemical brain. And the neuropeptides speak to our hormonal centers, the hormones flow, and then we have the feelings in our body. That's actually what happens. See, I haven't even talked about neuropeptides or hormones. I'm keeping it simple. So there's all of this to unpack, because the reason why, and so we can learn really quickly when there's a big, huge event and the body gets a massive dose of chemicals, like you get married, or you have this amazing experience of connection with a person, or you go out into nature and it's like, oh my God, the sun's there and everything's incredible and I'm just wow. You have some kind of wow experience. It's going to change you, and it can change you very quickly, and that's how emotion does it, because it's chemical, it's electrical, and our body's in the experience, and it's like it's immersive, as opposed to learning something by repetition. We have to practice it and do it again until it becomes immersive. So there's a slow track, fast track. But the point being that when it comes time to change, we have to undo all of that. We have to undo the fact that we've learned and practiced being a certain way for our entire lives, or whatever it is. Or we had this massive experience that changed us in a minute or an hour or a week or even in 3 months. If it's just one long experience, it changes you. And we have to change. If we want to change our lives, we have to change that. That's the point I want to get to. But until you understand this, it's like, what are you saying? Change my life. I've lived this experience. I went through that, and that is the reason why I can't change. But if you understand that it's not a reason, if you understand this is how it works, and so if I went through that, and that's how it worked, well, maybe I can teach my body to do something else. That's the point I want to get people to. You have to understand it to be able to realize that there's another possibility for your life. Otherwise, you're just thinking, like I did for 53 years, what do you mean change? I can't change. It's impossible. I've tried to think positive, I've tried to think happy, I've tried to feel like I'm safe in the world, and I can't. What do you mean? So that's the point that I'm getting to. And there's just a certain amount of things that you need to understand to be able to recognize that change is possible, and not just to take someone's word for it, to actually understand it a bit for yourself. That's what God of Me is about. That's what I'm doing. That's the journey. I kind of can't believe that I'm actually seeing this get written, but it is happening. And I know there are going to be exercises. Some of these things I think, oh, I could turn that into an exercise, or I have to find something that's going to make that experiential. It's not enough to think it in your mind. You have to fire it and wire it, share it with somebody. Yeah, that's why habits are hardwired, honey. Because it's over and over and over and over and over again, or we've had a very powerful experience, and then we thought about it over and over and over again. That just ingrains it further. But that's why. That's how it happens. So that also gives us hope, because it means we can change it. You can be sure it's going to be work. It is work. It doesn't happen in a moment. If I've been the way I've been for 45 years, then you can, if it takes me 3 years to change what I've been for 45, that's worth doing. Particularly since it's not 3 years of hard slog and then it changes at the end. There's a process, there's a journey, it gets better. But if I understand why it's so hard, and sometimes it is hellishly hard, that helps too. Because I can be in the middle of my experience and think, okay, My body's doing this, but I'm not. Or, oh my God, this is so intense. I actually can't stop it. But I know that if I keep trying, even though I can't stop it, if I just keep trying, every time I try, I'm firing and wiring, I'm reaching out in my brain to make new connections. Eventually they're going to connect and then there'll be a different chemistry. This is how it works. So, yeah, gotta me. That's what it's about. And it's about making that information available to people like you and me, and eventually to people in places who simply have no access to that information because they've got no money, no bandwidth, no life, no ability at all. But if they have a smartphone and if they can speak or at least read or understand English, then they will have an opportunity to access this information. But I'm starting with the developed world because there people do tend to have credit cards and they can usually afford a low subscription if they want the information, and that's the plan. That's what I'm doing. For now, if you would like to be my patron on Patreon and support this journey and also get extra things that I'm sharing with my patrons, more insights, things about me, behind the scenes stuff, and more things, and be able to ask me questions and we'll have a discussion and then build a community. And particularly, you're going to be the test crash dummies for my exercises. I'm going to be dropping things in there and say, could you give this a go? Please tell me what you think. I would love to have you in there. I would be really excited to have you in there. Yeah, changing is challenging, Nesreen, you're right. And you know what? Suffering is really, we only do it to ourselves and we actually get addicted. Our bodies, I mean, you might think, what? I don't want to suffer. But our bodies, you mean all that chemistry that keeps coming every time you think and then you feel, you think and you feel, you have an electrical thing going in your brain, you have a chemical thing going in your body over and over and over again. Your body becomes accustomed to the chemistry of suffering. You don't like it, but your body finds it familiar. So you actually have to overcome the inertia of your body saying, no, I know this. This is safe to me. You want me to do something else? You want me to feel joy? Are you effing kidding? That's exactly, by the way, how it was for me. We get addicted to the high of being low. You're totally right. And that's another thing that I will have to unpack very simply is how it is that we can be addicted to our own negativity and our own suffering and our own misery and our own limitations. And I know all about it because I'm in the process of change. So that's what I'm doing. I would love you to join me on Patreon. Thank you so much for joining me here. I so enjoy interaction. I've realised that. I love going live when I've got something to talk about. And I do now. So thank you for joining me. And I look forward to your comments and interaction on Patreon. You can follow me there for free. And I'd love to hear from you. Until next week, I'll be back then. Much love and be well. Bye-bye.